Hi, I'm Scott, and I'm here with Chad Warden, and we're Ask the Flood Guys at AskTheFloodGuys.com. And today we're going to be covering something that every contractor who does insurance work should know. And what is that, Chad?
Well, today we're going to cover an insurance term, like, kind, and quality, and back to pre-loss condition. And we're going to discuss how these help a contractor get their pricing to do the repairs they need to for the insured.
Okay, so let's start with the first one you said, which was like, kind, and quality. What does that mean?
Now, like, kind, and quality means that they're going to get the exact same thing that was destroyed. So if the cabinets that were ruined in a kitchen were all plywood, you should be charging the insurance company to replace all plywood cabinets and not be buying a lesser grade particle board cabinet.
And I was going to mention too that it also goes the other way too, doesn't it? It means if you have cheaper cabinets, for instance, you can't get custom replacement cabinets. So it works. You have to get your price according to what's there. You can't upgrade it without charging the customer, because the insurance company has no obligation to pay out better than like, kind, and quality, except for a couple of times we've been on jobs. If there's a policy rider called, what'd you call that before?
Code upgrade.
Code
rider.
Upgrade. Okay, so
and the code upgrade rider, if there's something that isn't the current code, if they have the code upgrade rider, they can get additional money to upgrade that. The last one that we did that was the door had to be replaced between the garage and the living space, and we upgraded that to a fire-rated self-closing door that meets today's code. If they didn't have the code rider, then we would have had to do the like, kind, and quality, and the customer would have had to pay for that out of pocket because that wasn't up to code.
And the insurance is under no obligation to get it back to code unless they have that rider. Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay. Because that's really important to know. If you're trying to get it done correctly and they don't have that rider, they might not be on your team. The customer might kind of fight against you to say, look, I've had a fire or water damage, and that part needs to be replaced with today's code. But as Chad just said, you can't just bite it. I wouldn't bite it if I was a contractor.
No, if there was major code upgrades and no one was paying for them, I would pass on the job.
Yeah, so that puts us into a quandary is what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah.
So that you can't really, if you can't do the job right, you walk away.
Yes.
Sometimes that's the right thing to do. We've done several over the years where we get started on the job and for whatever reason there's a falling out between the customer and the insurance company. It's really never between us and the customer because we know how to treat people. But they'll get fed up and they'll fire the adjuster, and then they'll just throw their hands up in the air and say, "Forget it, I'm going to take care of it myself. Take your stuff and get out." And we know that that's not the proper thing to do from the customer standpoint because they can't dry it correctly. But sometimes that pain is less painful for them to kick us off the job and do it themselves than to deal with the insurance company, unfortunately. And that's kind of why we're here.
And that's part of the money-saving tactics for insurance. It's difficult to navigate the process. So they save money by people that just forget some small jobs and just let them get moldy or leave the cabinets in their garage to be ruined because it was just too much hassle to go through the process.
Right.
The biggest problem, though, from the contracting end we have with like, kind, and quality that I've had is the adjuster will price something, and then you'll end up looking at the line item, and it's a quality level lower than what is there. So you'll have to either take photos or meet with the adjuster and go over what is actually there to make sure you get the right thing. The only things that we really don't have problems with would be like the carpet and flooring, because they send that to an ITEL lab, and that lab analyzes the flooring sample and gives a report back that's pretty hard to dispute. But most of the other things in the house, the trim, you have to double check if they're doing an adjustment on it. If they have 2 1/4 trim and the trim is 3 inches, you're not getting the right rate to replace that. And the homeowner's probably not going to be happy with 2 1/4 trim if it's 3-inch trim.
Right, and we actually have had a couple problems with ITEL. Chad just mentioned that's the group that the carpet sample, the 12-inch by 12-inch sample, sent to this laboratory. And what they do is analyze it and determine how much it should cost per square foot. And we've had several that have come back, as a matter of fact, a couple this year, where the ITEL report was much less than what we could find for the same quality. And at that point, it's going back to the adjuster as a contractor and telling them, hey, look, we have a dispute here. There's an issue with your ITEL report. Maybe their like kind of quality stacks up, and for whatever reason, the price is wrong. We just did that one together in a couple months ago, where the flooring contractor came out and he already did the install there originally, and so he gave us the price list that what he used to install it. Was it 8-9 years ago?
Yeah, the exact carpeting.
Yeah, the same carpet, the same pad.
Same
he gave us
contractor.
the bill, and it was a little bit extra because of the time, but it wasn't much extra. And they sent it to ITEL, the insurance company, depended on an ITEL report. It came back, it was much less per square foot than what this same installer could install it for.
And the insurance adjuster was trying to tell them they could get it that cheap done around town somewhere. But the homeowner's under no obligation to go find somebody cheaper. They wanted to use the contractor that they trusted and would honor their warranty. They didn't want to use a fly-by-night company. I'm sure they could have got it cheaper, but they didn't want to.
Well, can we analyze what the three words mean in like, kind, and quality?
Yeah.
Okay, so give me an example of what's like. What does that mean in the phrase like, kind, and quality?
That I'm referring to similar materials. It doesn't have to be the same brand, but it should have, if it's carpet, the same thread count. If it's lumber, if it's made out of pine, it should be pine.
I think that's the kind part.
Yeah, I guess you're right, yeah.
Yeah, so if it's a kind means like if you're using oak throughout and they have a pine replacement, well, obviously that broke that part of the like, kind, and quality statement. So. And then obviously quality means, cheap versus expensive, or not even necessarily cheap versus expensive, but of higher quality versus lesser quality.
We run into that on the lumber a lot. Like if there's custom built shelves, they'll give a price for just a lower quality wood that has knots, and it'll be built out of clear lumber that has no knots in it, which is much more expensive. And if it's painted, they'll leave that out, but that's something the homeowner didn't have shelves built with knots in it. They had a high quality lumber.
And let's back up on that, because I remember that one job that we just worked on recently, the knots were showing through on that paint job.
Yeah.
And he had to go back through and stain them all, didn't he?
Yeah.
So if that had been ruined, perhaps it would have been less expensive for the insurance company to use the upgraded lumber. And that's another way that you can talk with the adjuster and the consumer, the insured, about that. Is if it's going to save the insurance company money with the upgrade, then it's probably a no-brainer. They're going to say, go ahead. Both parties will be all aboard that.
Yeah. They'll pay for dustless floor sanding all day, because then they don't have to pay for whole house cleaning.
Right, exactly.
So
yeah, we just went through that too. So, we had a lot of unusual things happen over the past few months, and it's only April. So.
Yeah. Well, this was we had the most snow on record ever in the
Michigan.
for this winter season. So we saw 1,000-pound ice dams, frozen pipes.
Yeah, and we still, I think, have you been paid on all of yours or most of them?
Almost all of them.
Okay,
from the winter,
I finally got paid. We did the dry down, so that's been done 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So we just finally got paid on the last one that we did in February, March. I think we wrapped up the very last one, so not too bad. But I'll tell you, they're still coming back asking questions. I got a call from one of the adjusters today asking some questions, even though they've already paid out.
Yeah.
And I was like, you guys paid me already, but I'll submit the bill again if you want. Oh no, we think we understand what happened. They got so many at the same time.
Yeah, they were swamped. We had adjusters from as far away as Texas coming up to do adjustments here, and when they were doing the adjustments, it was about -10 to -19. So it was pretty comical watching Southerners come up here to have to do work.
I thought the guy from Texas, man, he looked like an Eskimo.
Yeah.
He had a huge Eskimo coat on, big mucklucks. I was like, man,
We were wearing
Not from around here, are you?
we were wearing sweatshirt, light pair of gloves, and a small hat, and he had on a full Eskimo suit.
Yeah, I think it was 5 degrees that day.
Yeah.
And he just looked like he was ready for living
But
in an igloo.
he had been working so long and so hard, he actually worked with us really hard to get the adjustment done, because him and his wife were actually living up here in a hotel. So they were trying to get all their work done, closed out, and go home.
Right. Sometimes the pressure is back on the adjuster, too. Sometimes they want to just get her done, and they don't care about, as long as you're not trying to screw them over.
Yeah.
They'll be very accommodating to say, okay, normally we'd fight you on ITEL, for instance, or we'd look at that closer, but sometimes the adjuster wants to get the heck out of there, and that can help you, too.
To make sure the job got closed on that, they actually called me and offered me more money to do the job just to agree to the price, so I'd agree immediately so they could hand it up to their bosses and get it done.
That's the one where you applied that mold spray.
Yeah, the
Concrobium.
Concrobium.
Yeah.
They paid extra. They decided to have me spray that in there, and I fogged the whole room with Concrobium. Then we went to breakfast, and then went back to normal rebuilding.
Yeah, normally that's something that they would start scratching their head over, right?
Oh.
Like, hey, I don't see any visible mold here. What are you doing spraying Concrobium? You have to fight tooth and nail for that.
If you think you need it, yeah, you have to fight tooth and nail. I didn't think I needed it here at all, and they put it on the bill, and we're intent on paying and getting that check cut for that extra amount with that. So
That's pretty funny.
yeah,
I like how that works out sometimes. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes they'll ask, in the dry down side especially, we're seeing it more and more often that they're requesting the dry down records. And we always keep records, so for us it's not a big deal. But I know enough guys in the industry who are just doing a couple of jobs here and there. They don't always keep good records. Sometimes they don't take readings. You're supposed to take, the grain readings of each room and the specific moisture content of each item that's wet. And sometimes they don't do that, and you really have to cover your butt. We're seeing more and more adjusters started saying, hey, look, we need those records, and without it, we're just not going to be able to pay you, or we're going to start looking at your bill a lot closer. So it only takes a couple of minutes to fire the machine up and take a look. So
if you take a paperwork record of it, it happened, is how bureaucrats think.
that's true.
So if there's a questionable thing we take apart, we take photos of it from the contracting end. You're doing something that has sign. There's nothing to see because it's not like you're trying to dry a puddle.
Right.
So you have to have the scientific records of it. And as long as it's written down, and any type of bureaucrat loves that.
Yeah, as long as it's written, it's official.
Yeah, and
If it's unwritten, it's unofficial, and therefore
And it didn't
questionable. Yeah, it didn't happen. But yeah, pictures, that's another big thing. I think we'll probably end up doing another video some other time about how to take videos and pictures of a loss. Maybe we'll do it on the actual job site.
Yeah, that would be good if you could see what we actually are looking at, what photos we are looking for to show, so that we can get all the money that's due to the insured to get their structure fixed.
Right.
And yeah, I think a lot of it too, doing insurance work correctly, there's a lot of things that usually go beyond the scope of where it just happened into the other rooms, which a lot of the
Right, yeah.
get
Water
missed a lot
flows
of times.
underneath, or, that one job that we did for, I don't want to mention his name, but CS, he had the ice dam that started on one side of his roof, and just because it was the south side, it decided to melt first. And then later on, a week later,
Yeah,
as we were out there, he sees water dripping down the opposite side of his roof. A whole complete different ice dam. So we ended up having to dry down both sides of this, what we initially thought was just
it was double.
One
It
puddle.
turned into a double job.
it turned into another job, right?
Yeah.
So, and that actually happened on several jobs this winter, is when we got going on one thing, got it done, and then we got called back out because of an ice dam.
Yeah, the one, there was an adjuster there. We were fighting over the original adjustment, and then it started leaking through the roof from an ice dam.
Yeah. That was originally from a frozen pipe.
Yeah.
And then while we were out
Yeah.
there with the adjuster, it just so happened that there's an ice dam.
So
And the adjuster saw it.
yeah, so they had 2 insurance claims, so they had to pay 2 deductibles, which
Yeah.
was a bummer for them. But
Well, they
they
actually got an
yeah.
upgrade they needed their floors redone anyways. So
Yeah, the floor had to be part of it had to get cut out. And that's one of the other things too about like, kind, and quality. I forgot to mention too that hardwood floor was damaged in a very small section. It was oak. It can be repaired, but the entire floor, the insurance company owes them for like, kind, and quality to be refinished. Because even though it wasn't perfect, it all matched. And once you replace pieces, that means the entire floor, the whole wood floor for the entire upstairs had to be refinished. On the repairs, a lot of times we'll find adjusters they'll adjust an item and they'll say there's a 10 square foot area of hardwood floor that's damaged, and they'll pay you to replace the 10 square foot area and just give you money to stain that. And if the homeowner and contractor agree to do it, the floor won't be like, kind, and quality because the stain won't match throughout. So that's one of those areas where you've got to know your stuff there to make sure you're getting everything that's due to the insured. Plus, the job you're doing looks right instead of a piecemeal job.
And it also comes back to another term that the insurance company uses, and that's called pre-loss condition. So you're using like, kind, and quality materials to return the structure back to pre-loss condition. And that's exactly what Chad meant by getting the whole floor even, because it was like that to start with, and after the flood it wasn't.
You know what the best example of that is, and you'll see it every day driving around, is when you see a patch in a roof that doesn't match, if that's insurance work, or a patch in siding. People have siding blow off, and you'll see a house, and the siding obviously doesn't match. There's a patch where the other siding's 10 years old, and the new siding's not faded in, and they don't match. That goes against pre-loss condition and like, kind, and quality. Before the incident happened, the entire roof matched and the entire siding matched. Sometimes you can get away with just doing one whole wall on a house because that whole wall will match nicely and you can't tell from the sides. Mm-hmm. But to just replace 5 pieces or 10 pieces of siding on one wall that sticks out like a sore thumb, that's actually the insured's getting cheated out of what's due to them because now their house doesn't match and it did before, which was pre-loss condition.
Yeah, and the insurance does have limits on what they consider an area too, because if they had a flood in the whole basement that's wide open, now all the carpet, let's say, matched and it has to all come out. Well, that all has to match to end with. But if it stops in a room, and it goes to a different section where you can't really see the carpeting transition, they may call that a different area, and therefore the whole thing's not covered. So the loss happened, let's say, in the basement living room, and the rest of the carpet is, all the carpet's the same to start with. Let's say it's a Category 3 flood, you have to pull out the carpet, the pad, clean everything. And then if you're going to put it back in there, because it's a different room, it's a different area, they call it. And let's say there's a transition between that and the carpeting of the other area, they'll stop in the bedroom and say that's it. Now, is there a little bit of room there to talk to the insurance about it? Absolutely. The adjusters are mostly pretty flexible. They like to give and take. If you're take on everything, then they may say no. But and it really comes back to a lot of times your communication level, and if you talk to the adjuster well and create a rapport with them. Doesn't mean that they're not out to get you, but at least you can sometimes get your way without having to fight for it.
And get more of what's owed to the insured and do a better job.
Right.
And but like the siding, look around next time you're driving around. You'll see those. Now, sometimes people just fix those themselves, but a lot of times they're insurance repairs that basically aren't done right.
Right.
So
yeah, they had that tornado. If you go down D19 there.
Yeah.
There's a major outbreak of tornadoes a couple of years ago, and you can see houses that have been patched up still today.
Yeah.
3 years ago?
3 years ago.
The third year.
And they look like a patchwork quilt. And if you were that, if that's your house and you were the insured that got that work done, you were basically cheated out of what was owed to you. What was owed to you was a pre-loss condition house.
And let's talk about why it's important to return the property to pre-loss condition. Number one is valuation. Your house devalues when it doesn't all match. So now you've got the siding that's all patchwork, and you go to sell your home, and people are like, look at that place.
Well, what happened here?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're supposed to disclose all that, but still, if it's been put back together improperly with and not back to pre-loss condition, then they might just drive down the road to find a place that either hasn't been affected or that's been returned to pre-loss condition. And you start wondering, what else did they skip?
Exactly, yeah.
Right? You're like, okay, they skipped the siding here, they just patched that in. What else did they patch in? So,
well, and from a contractor standpoint, just from your reputation, down the road, even the neighbors might not know what's going on, and they'll be like, "Oh, that was such and such contractor did that half repair there," instead of doing it right. So you that way you can keeps your reputation better, and you can do better work, and instead of piecing into old garbage, you can replace it like it needs to be.
Yeah. Okay, Chad. Well, I think that's about all I have for this segment of Ask the Flood Guys. Did you have anything else?
No, I'm just looking forward to the next segment.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm Scott, and this is Chad, and we're signing out for now.